On today's DNVR Broncos show, we're talking about the surprise move of the Broncos moving on from Tim Patrick. Will they be able to trade him? What does that mean for the rest of the Broncos receivers? Who is this good news for? And why did they make this move to move on from Tim? We're talking about it now. Not Tim Patrick. Anyone but Tim. Don't move on from the fan favorite Tim Patrick, but that's what the Broncos did, and we're breaking it down on the DNVR Broncos podcast, where I've got Henry Chisholm, I've got Super Bowl 50 champ Todd Davis, here behind the camera, and yours truly, Zach Stevens, rocking and rolling with you today, live from the Toyota Lounge, driven by your Front Range Toyota stores inside the DNVR Bar. We've got a big day today. In the next 3 hours, the Broncos are going to have to make over 20 cuts in order to get down to the final 53-man roster. George Paton's talking to the media at 3 p.m., and then we're going to be doing a show right after his call to just break down all the moves, why they made these moves. But we had to do one before then because a surprise move to most of us came out yesterday that the Broncos have said goodbye or will say goodbye. They're either going to trade Tim Patrick or release him if they're not able to. What was your initial reaction, Todd?
I thought it was a tough situation. I love Tim. I think he's a great person and also has been through so much as a Bronco, always fighting back. Was so good for us when he was healthy. He was just fighting to stay healthy. And I think this training camp was specifically hard for him because it's like, they want me to get back healthy, so I'm on a pitch count, but they also want me to produce like I did when I was healthy. But if they don't want me taking all the reps, how can I produce that? It's like it's a weird dynamic for him. So it's tough to see them make this decision. And no matter what happens, I'm happy that he's healthy so that he can go out there and put his best foot forward and be the Tim Patrick that we all love.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like it. It's not what I would have done. I get it. Seems like with this move and the Samaje move, the Broncos really are just trying to move on and give the young guys opportunities. But I also think that you're probably moving on from your second and third best third down options. And I'm not sure that this year's all about giving opportunities to the rookies as much as it's get Bo Nix the weapons he needs to succeed this year so that you can feel good about his future so that he can develop. And I think that Tim Patrick, from what I saw, was one of their better receivers. I get there's contract differences between him and Josh Reynolds. I think he was as good as Josh Reynolds was in training camp. I think that when we've looked back through both of their careers, Tim Patrick has done a lot more as an NFL player than Josh Reynolds. Now there's obviously the injuries, but when I just look at this, I think you're making things harder for Bo Nix, and that is not what I would do at this point. I get the reasons they do it. I don't think it's a horrible decision, but it's not what I would have done.
I'm just confused, and help me out with this, guys, because at the beginning of training camp, I thought Tim Patrick might be on the outside looking in just because, back-to-back season-ending injuries. How many players overcome that? He hadn't been in the end zone in 1,000 days. So if you would have told me at the beginning of training camp, yeah, Tim's not going to make it, I wouldn't have been surprised. But then he goes out, stays healthy, and then also might be like the second best receiver on the team he shows throughout training camp and the preseason. Of course, Courtland Sutton, no one was getting close to him. But I thought Tim was arguably the second best receiver. So I'm like, oh, wow, okay, I can really see him making the roster. And then 2 games ago, he goes out, catches 4 passes on 4 targets for 30 yards, has a touchdown. And it's like, man, this is awesome. What a good story, but also a good player. I think the Broncos themselves tweeted it out. Tim's more than a good story. He's also helping this team. They tweeted that right after the second preseason game. And then on top of that, you have Sean Payton multiple times throughout training camp say, we're looking for the best 53 players. And he made it very clear, this isn't going to be about money when it comes to these players. This isn't going to be about this youth movement that is clearly going on. This is going to be about the best 53 players on the roster. And so I see that, and I see Tim establish himself as either the second or the third best receiver, definitely a guy that can play in the NFL. And then I listen to Sean, and something doesn't add up here. Either Tim wasn't as good as Henry and I saw, and Todd, you were in the building, so I want your answers on this in just a minute, or it isn't fully 100% about getting the best 53 players on the roster right now, like Sean has said.
Yeah, I think that Tim had a great camp. I think that when I was there, I think every day he came to work, I think he worked hard. I think he knew his plays. I think he was very dedicated. And I think you saw that show up on Sundays during the preseason. So he looked really good. For me, I think the best 53 for Sean are maybe not about the pieces, but ultimately about the puzzle. I don't know if he just needs the best 53 pieces, but the best 53 to make the puzzle that he wants to make, I think is what he's saying.
Like for this year or long-term puzzle?
Long-term puzzle.
I think both also.
Yeah.
I mean, this year you've got Court, Josh Reynolds, Tim Patrick, Devaughn Vele. Lil Jordan Humphrey, I believe, is going to be in the building in some form. Not all the exact same player. A lot of similarities between those five guys. Whereas, Troy Franklin didn't have the camp that Tim Patrick. There are just too many drops. I mean, you see the flashes, but he just didn't capitalize on the opportunities enough. At the same time, he's a speed threat, and that just provides something different to the offense.
But you just said that he was the second or third best receiver on your team. How does that fit the puzzle this year?
I mean,
like week one, again, I look at this move, and week one, the Broncos are weaker at the wide receiver group without Tim Patrick. Am I wrong?
I mean, as great as Devaughn Vele was, he was more productive in camp than Tim Patrick was. Week one, if it's the first 3rd and 5 of the season, I'd rather have Tim Patrick out there running the route than Devaughn Vele just because he's proven. By the end of the season, you really hope that is flipped. Again, when you look at that group, I think Courtland Sutton is Courtland Sutton. He's the top dog there. Josh Reynolds, Tim Patrick, honestly, Lil Jordan Humphrey in that group too. Based on just what we saw in training camp, not a huge difference. Tim Patrick, though, you can move on from, whereas Josh Reynolds, you can't. Lil Jordan Humphrey you could probably just give him to the practice squad. I'll be curious to see if he makes the team. We'll talk about that in the next show. But you kind of just had to make a decision there. So I get why it was Tim.
I don't think you had to make a decision there. You could have kept Tim and Josh Reynolds and Courtland Sutton and Devaughn Vele and Marvin, Mims, Troy Franklin. Boom, there's your 6. And
if you're keeping 6, they only kept 4 last year.
Right, exactly. But right now it does seem like they're going to keep 5 or 6. You could stretch it out to 6 like that. So I think Broncos fans are really confused at why they made this move because everyone got to see him perform in the second preseason game. 4 targets, 4 catches, 30 yards, and a touchdown. And Henry, I think we both said in this past week that Tim Patrick was going to be a starting receiver for the Broncos.
Yeah.
Like if you put a group out there, it's probably Tim Patrick and Courtland Sutton on the outside and then Josh Reynolds in the slot. And boom, there's your 3 right there. And no, you were going to rotate guys. Of course, Vele was going to get on the field. There were going to be packages, I imagine, for Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin, at least later in the year with Franklin. But I thought that was it right there. So I think just Broncos fans were really caught off guard by this. Todd, were you caught off guard? Or was this maybe a move that was more predictable to some?
I definitely was still caught off guard. I thought that he was still a good piece to the puzzle that the Broncos are trying to put together now. I just feel like we may be looking at things from each player instead of understanding how Sean wants to use people to work with Bo Nix. Because like you said, there are a couple guys that have similar traits where, he wants to throw in some guys with different attributes to really help Bo succeed, to kind of break the field in half, run an RPO scheme to one side and have some deep threats on the other side. I think that if he wants to do that, you need different bodies running different routes, at different speeds.
But John told us he saw that, what was it, the San Francisco 49ers team come out of the tunnel in 1998 or something like that, and he saw just the size of those receivers, and he said, man, every one of them was huge. That's what I want with this group. And you just moved on from your biggest player potentially with that. Like it sounded like he was all in on the height. So that's just where I'm confused. I do think it hurts your team this year. at least in week 1 and early in the season. And I think that was probably the best safety net you could have for Bo Nix. Is any of these guys, I do trust Courtland Sutton to catch the ball. I do trust Devaughn Vele to catch the ball. But when I went and saw Tim Patrick go out there this offseason, I thought, man, he's back to his old self, which was Mr. Reliable. And a couple of years ago, before Tim got hurt, inside the building, they thought Tim Patrick was the best receiver among Courtland Sutton, among Jerry Jeudy when he was there. It was Tim Patrick. That's the guy that they liked the most before he had those back-to-back season-ending injuries. And I saw that guy this training camp. So I just thought, man, that is your third down guy. But I think it's a really good point, Todd, that maybe it's part of a bigger puzzle beyond just this year. And a guy who's 30, coming off back-to-back season-ending injuries.
Old,
hey, I'm older than 32, so
Also,
don't worry.
That reminds me. I had a bunch of people telling me like he's on the wrong side of 30. I don't think I think you have to be 31 because you're not on a side of 30 when you're 30. You're just 30.
No,
so I just want to push back on that.
If you're on 30, you're on the wrong side.
You're not
of 30.
on the wrong side of 30.
Yeah.
You are 30. You're not on a side of 30. You're on top of 30.
I will make this point though. I think that the Tim Patrick that we know and love and we've seen, that's somebody that Sean has never coached or seen. Like I think the year before he gets here, if he looks at all the film from Russell Wilson all the year before he got here, none of it has TP on it. He comes here, his very first year, TP is not healthy, so he's not on the field. He comes back, yes, he's making plays, and he's getting back to who he was, but Sean has never seen the guy that we all know him to be and know who he can be. So I think his lens is a little bit distorted compared to all of ours.
It's a great point. And I definitely have to put myself in Sean's shoes to view it like that. So how was Tim different this year? Like what version of Tim was Sean seeing?
I think Tim is still getting back to himself. I don't think Tim was 100%. I think if Tim was the guy that we saw, 3 years ago, not dropping any passes, Mr. Reliable, whenever the number one receiver on the Broncos, like I think that he's not there yet. Is he still going to get there? Yes. Is he capable of doing it? Is he healthy enough to do it? Absolutely. Will he get there this year? 100%. I believe it. I just feel like because he was being asked to slow things down and build up, he was never able to be 100% every single day, every single play. And I don't know whose fault that is. I don't think that's Tim's fault. It's just what happened.
Yep. And to go back to the big receivers thing, I think there's a good chance, maybe the most likely thing that happens is that they start Courtland Sutton, Josh Reynolds, and Devaughn Vele. I'd be shocked if that isn't the biggest starting lineup of wide receivers in the NFL, if that's what they do.
Yeah, but then
So
if you wanted to go 4 deep and then put Tim out there too, I mean, that's the room that Sean was pointing to walking out of the building. But I mean, you're right. They still have so much height there.
Yep.
And it's kind of wild that Tim Patrick 2.0, Devaughn Vele, is maybe the guy that allowed this move to happen. Like, it was too good to be true that they drafted Tim Patrick's replacement who looked like Tim Patrick, who played like Tim Patrick, who was from the same school as Tim Patrick, who then wore Tim Patrick's old number. Is that the guy that the Broncos are going to look at to replace Tim Patrick and maybe have as big of a role as we're talking about we thought Tim was going to have? Let's dive into that question after I give a shout out to our friends over at Toyota. We're sitting in the Toyota Lounge, of course, driven by Toyota, your Front Range Toyota stores. And if you want to drive a Toyota, make sure to check out the Front Range stores. And if you want any sort of car, Toyota's got it, from a sports car Supra to a big hybrid truck like the Tundra I-Force Max hybrid truck. And that hybrid power, or that hybrid engine, just adds even more power to the Tundra truck that they've got. They also have 16 different vehicles available in hybrid that you can choose from. They have 17 different models of all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. Todd, let me put you on the hot seat here. What's the difference between all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive?
I don't know. I guess
Oh, good.
Wow.
four-wheel drive means that all four tires are spinning at the same time.
Okay.
All-wheel drive, I don't know the difference.
The difference. So I'm the only gearhead on this show, I guess, is what they call car people. Henry didn't know either.
No, I didn't know that.
I know. Yeah. No, gearhead.
There was one of the montage clips that I wanted for you. Yeah.
4-wheel drive you can turn off and make a 2-wheel drive.
the
All-wheel
only
drive.
difference?
Yep. All-wheel drive is always all-wheel drive. Yep, exactly. Over at Toyota, you can get 17 different models with all-wheel drive, like their Epic 4Runner. So make sure to check them out and visit a Front Range Toyota store near you. AutoNation Toyota, Rapalin Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota, the official automotive partner of the NFL and the official vehicle of DNVR.
And check out Indeed. If you're hiring somebody, Indeed is a great place to do it. We just hired a whole entire staff for the Dallas branch, DLLS, and I'd imagine they did that through Indeed. I can't back that up, but I'm just going to say that that's probably what they did because
Sounds
Indeed is
right.
awesome. And even better, if you're trying to hire somebody, you can post your job on Indeed and get a $75 sponsored job credit if you use our link. There's a bunch of reasons to go to Indeed. They've got 350 million global monthly visitors. They have a matching system so that you don't need to sort through them. They'll just look through your preferences, the resumes that they've got in there, and try to find good matches. And the more you use Indeed, the better the matches get. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites. 3.5 million businesses worldwide use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Like I said, listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
If you are watching our show right now and live specifically, and you want to know what moves the Broncos have made, they've made 20 moves right now, and we're tracking it over at thednvr.com. We've got a tracker up there. Click on that, and you'll see all the moves the Broncos have made. Just about 17 moves left. And like I said, we're going to be going live just after 3:15 or so today to be talking about all of the moves they've made. But let's get back into the biggest move they've made so far. Moving on from Tim Patrick. A source told me that the Broncos moved on from Tim Patrick, one, because of the depth that they had at receiver. They were going to have to move on from a player that they knew could play. And Sean gave us this warning for over a year now. He said, one of the things that I don't want to do when making the 53-man roster, I don't want to move on from a player that then will go have success somewhere else. He says that's the worst feeling you can have. And Todd, when he brought this up this training camp, on the very first day of camp, he then immediately pointed to you. And he said, one of these coaches that we've got out here right now, Todd Davis, he was with me in New Orleans, and man, we tried to hide him, but the Broncos took him, and it makes you feel sick when you go and see. Of course, you want your players to have success, but when you go and see someone that was in your building that you could have kept, when they go somewhere else and then have a great career and they go win a Super Bowl and then they become a starter and they become a captain, that is not who you want. You never want to be in that position. But then he gave us the warning about 2 weeks ago. He said, there's some of these guys at the receiver position that might move on and have success somewhere else. And that's like his worst nightmare. And he's admitting that it might happen because the room is so deep there. And we're seeing a lot of guys the Broncos move on from at receiver that they want back on the practice squad if they don't get picked up somewhere else. So the room is really deep. And then two is that depth in the room that they're going to keep can play special teams. And Tim, just at 30 years old, on the wrong side of 30, Henry, he just wasn't playing special teams and not a contributor there. So those were the two reasons that I was told that they moved on from him. So then now let's look at this depth and look at who they have on this. Is it too easy to just point to the new number 81 on the team and say it's Devaughn Vele is just going to take Tim's role?
I think they have a couple guys, and they have a couple guys that can play, and I don't know if Marvin Mims is going to step in and have a bigger role, but they have 2 draft picks that it's just you can't cut those guys. You know what I'm saying? You can't get them to the practice squad. I think they're too valuable, and I think often we talk about potential all the time. Like they're always going to choose potential. So I don't think it's just Vele, and I don't think it's just Josh. I think it's like a handful of guys that they're going to have play different positions to be able to fill that Tim Patrick role.
And Tim Patrick didn't have a role. He hasn't played for 2 years. The last time he had a role was, so I don't think there's like just take what Tim Patrick did last year and sub somebody into that, because he didn't.
No, I think we're just talking about what he can do.
Yeah.
And what
Not
we saw, I
necessarily,
mean,
I
we
think,
did
what
see him
role carved out
practice
for him.
over these past 4 years.
I mean,
4
Josh
months.
Reynolds does some of that. Devaughn Vele does some of that. Again, Cortland Sutton does some of those same things too, or at least he can. He's maybe not quite as limited as those other two are, but he does those same things as well. I think Lil Jordan Humphrey also, we'll find out later if he's actually on the team. I doubt it. Seems like he's put on the practice squad and have him do those same things.
Yep.
But again, like that role is something they have so much of. It makes sense to move on from one of them. It just sucks that it's Tim, because Tim was one of the vets who you wanted to see kind of come out on the other side of this slide that they've been on for like 8 years. Justin Simmons, another one of those guys where, when we look back on Justin Simmons' career, we're going to say like, yeah, it really sucks that he just never got to play on a good team. And it seemed like Tim, there we go. Never mind. They did him. Todd, you're one of those guys too. Obviously win the Super Bowl early on, but just didn't get to see that next kind of era come in. And Tim should have been, we hoped, one of those guys who, with the energy he had, would get to see it from the other side. So it sucks that he's the one who's gone, but you just have so many guys who played that exact role that something had to give.
But just, I feel like, and Todd, I think you're definitely right, and it's a really good perspective that Sean has never seen this Tim in person. And when he turned on the tape and watched Russell Wilson the year before, Tim wasn't even there with that Russell Wilson. You had to go before the Russell Wilson era, which just seems like ages ago that Tim Patrick was healthy. But I feel like outside of that, we are downplaying who Tim was as a player. You say that they have so many guys, Henry, that can play this Tim Patrick role. No, they don't. They only have one guy on this team that has had a better season than Tim Patrick, and that's Cortland Sutton. Josh Reynolds has never had a 700-yard receiving season. Tim Patrick has done that twice. In fact, it was the 2 seasons that he was healthy. So, no, they haven't had a guy that's been this Tim Patrick role, that's been such a big piece of the offense. Devaughn Vele, I really like him. In fact, I think he might be the second leading receiver on this team, and I said that before they even released Tim Patrick. I think he's really going to pick up at the end of the season. He's a rookie. In fact, at Utah, he never had a 700-yard receiving season. He only had 560 in his best year at Utah last year. Josh Reynolds has topped out in the NFL at about 650 with the Lions. And then you just look around and no one else is proven. Marvin Mims had a great 4 games to start the season last year, then completely fell off. I think was on pace to be a 1,000-yard receiver in the first 4 games and ended up the rest of the season with like 150 total receiving yards. So you're talking about a team that has no experience with anyone with Tim Patrick's receiving level outside of Cortland Sutton. And you're talking about a rookie quarterback. I just thought, man, it made so much sense to keep him. And you know what? Tim probably wasn't going to be a 700-yard receiver this year. But at some point in the season, you hope Devaughn Vele overtakes him. And Sean, instead of deciding that, just decided he's going to take over right now, I think. So I do think that we're underplaying what Tim brings and the role he has because no one else has been like this outside of Cortland.
I would just say all of those guys play the same role. It's just that Tim is better at it. Like Tim is more proven doing that. Like again, like when you look at the role is big guy, catches balls, 5 to 10 yards downfield, moves the sticks on third downs. You love him as a slot receiver. You love him as a blocker. You also, just love the energy he brings. Like he's like an attitude. Like he kind of sets the tone for the team. Kind of gives them an identity with the way that he talks, and he loves to hit linebackers. But again, when you're talking about the role is big guy, moves the chains on third downs. When you're talking about the production and replacing the production, again, like nobody has proven they can do that, so it is a stretch. And I'd say the same thing about Samaje. You hope Audric Estime can do some of the things that he does. You hope that Jaleel can do some of the things he does on third downs, but they haven't proven that they can. You just hope by the end of the season they get there, similar to how you hope Devaughn Vele could surpass a Tim Patrick by the end of the season. It's also a 7th-round pick, and so if it doesn't happen, how surprised can we really be?
And I think with Tim, you look around and look at this receiving group right now. Outside of Cortland Sutton, How many other guys that are receivers on this team, as it stands right now, were before the Sean Payton era, were brought in without Sean Payton? You look, Cortland Sutton was not. Outside of Cortland, though, Marvin Mims was Sean Payton. Troy Franklin, Sean Payton. Devaughn Vele, Sean Payton. Josh Reynolds, Sean Payton. Lil Jordan Humphrey, who, as we're doing this right now, he's on the team, Sean Payton. Sean Payton's team.
Absolutely.
That's why it's not surprising. You had that with what you said earlier, Todd, about how Sean Payton has never seen it. That's really the only reason that this doesn't surprise me here. That and the youth movement aspect here. He's not a Sean Payton guy. And what do we know about this team? How many, were there like 17 or 20 connections from coaches to front office to players brought in from the Saints just last year? And then we've seen more of that continue this year. This is just Sean Payton's team, and it's what he's comfortable with. So that's the biggest reason, maybe the only reason why I'm not surprised by this. And I get it. You bring a guy in here, you pay him $20 million a year to be your head coach. You essentially give him power over the roster, at least to some extent. He's working with George Payton over that. It's not like the GM has final say anymore like they used to. When they hired Sean, they said, yeah, these guys are going to be equal. And Greg Penner said they're both going to report to me. If there's any disagreements, they'll both report to me on that. So you give him so much power. I want it to be Sean Payton's team.
Yeah, and I think that, the way that Sean looks at his players is not like, it's not always like who's the best and who's like has done the most. It's what can you do for me? What can I make you into? So I don't think 700 yards, the fact that nobody has done it, scares Sean. If he wants somebody to have 700 yards, he's going to find a way for them to have 700 yards. And I think that's how he structures his team and then also the plays that he puts together. So I think losing TP is a huge loss for the team because of how great of a wide receiver he is. But believe me, if he wants Vele to have 700 yards, he'll find a way to get Vele the ball and him have 700 yards.
That's not a big number. And the other piece of it is that Sean...
It's a big number when it comes to Broncos.
It's
It's nice
big for the Broncos,
Yes.
but in the grand scheme of NFL, like if your starting receivers aren't getting 700 yards, you've got really big issues. The other thing with Sean is that like he's hit on those guys. He brings in Devaughn Vele, and because Devaughn Vele looks like he can give you at least 80% of what Tim Patrick did right out of the gate, you get to move on from Tim and save that roster spot. Josh Reynolds, again, I wouldn't say he had like this standout training camp, but he's done enough that he isn't causing concerns that make the Broncos think, we'd better keep Tim Patrick just in case. They feel good about Lil Jordan Humphrey. They honestly, they probably thought they have 8 receivers who have good reason to be on the team and could be of value, and just had to pick a couple to get rid of. And when Tim's money isn't guaranteed this year, but you've got to pay Josh Reynolds at least a few $1 million regardless of whether he plays or not, like that just makes it easy.
How much was guaranteed for TP?
I don't think anything was guaranteed. They redid the contract this offseason to cut down the salary to a little bit more than the veteran minimum, gave him some incentives, gave him some per game bonuses, but I don't think any of that was guaranteed.
It wasn't even guaranteed to start the season.
I'm pretty sure it wasn't. Whereas Josh Reynolds, I'm not sure what the number is, but I'm sure of the $8 million, $9 million they gave him over 2 years, at least a few millions guaranteed.
Yeah, I think at least 4.5 was guaranteed pretty much this entire season. So, and I just think another reason why people were confused or caught off guard by this is when Tim did restructure his contract in the offseason, it felt like it was because, okay, that means he's going to be here. He's not going to be making money, but he's going to be here. Okay, we did not get to talking about who exactly is going to replace him, so let's do that after I give a shout out to our friends over at Circle K. Everyone needs to stop by a gas station, whether you have a gas car, even if you have an electric car, you're still stopping by the gas station to pick up some drinks, some snacks, some Slurpees, or even if you're getting some Polar Pop over at Circle K, they've got a deal for you. If you have the app, the Circle K Inner Circle app, they're going to hook you up with deals left and right. It's a free membership. Download the app, sign up again for free, enter your email and phone number to be fully enrolled, and after that, all you need is your phone number to get deals. Your first 5 Polar Pops are going to be free, and through the end of summer, after that, you're going to get a Polar Pop or a Froster for just 79 cents on any size, which is insane. It's an exclusive deal for Inner Circle members. So how do you do it? Go to the app, download the app in the Inner Circles app, go to offers, then you'll find it there, or you can go to circlek.com/inner-circle. That's circlek.com/inner-circle for more information on how to become an Inner Circle member. We used to have a snack cart here with Circle K snacks, and they were so good that they were gone every single time it was filled. So they've got our stamp of approval. Check them out, circlek.com/inner-circle.
And shout out to our friends who are at Game Time. GameTime.co. If you can use code DNVR to get $20 off your first purchase. You guys know that Game Time is the #1 place to buy tickets, not only for sporting events, but theater, music, comedy. They definitely have you covered no matter what you're into. And they also have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And I personally use Game Time all the time, especially when the Nuggets are playing. I know somebody in the ticket office and I get really good deals from the Nuggets themselves, but sometimes Game Time beats those tickets. So you don't want to sleep on Game Time. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code DNVR for $20 off your first purchase. Remember, terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code DNVR for $20 off.
I used Game Time to get tickets this Montana game this weekekend. Almost, I was like, I checked.
$4 or $5?
They were $138.
To go see Montana?
Yeah, $138.
$1.38.
Oh,
No.
That's including the flight and your hotel. That's all together.
Okay.
I wish that was true. But I checked all the websites. Cheapest I found anywhere else for those exact same ones, $141. Saved
Wow.
$3 a ticket.
There you go.
How about it?
Every time it's the cheapest.
I love it. And I think why, because I think a lot of Broncos fans feel more so how I'm feeling today about the Tim Patrick move than necessarily you two, where you're a little more
What do you
accepting
mean?
of it.
No.
No.
I hate it. Don't think that I'm accepting of it.
Yeah.
Like, can I think through the logic of the Broncos? Absolutely. But do I like it? No, not at all.
Okay, Henry likes it. Henry likes that
Okay.
they moved on. So let me just throw
I said bad decision. This is not what I would do. And it hurts even more. Like, if you take the logic out of it, then it's an even worse decision because it's just painful to see Tim go. Because, like, again, we talked a lot about the way he plays football. I think that with the attitude that you want this offense to have when you're a highest paid player, other than Russell Wilson still, is a guard. Like, you want to be big and physical, and Tim Patrick is like the perfect piece for that. And so I think also on a deeper level than just football, I think it sucks.
Okay, totally fair. I was just getting different vibes from you guys, but thanks for setting the record straight there. But here's why Broncos fans should take a step back, take a deep breath, is Sean Payton has never invested in the receiver position. And people might say, whoa, he had Michael Thomas. Okay, remember what Michael Thomas was. Michael Thomas was a second-round pick. The Broncos have a second-round pick, 2 second-round picks on the roster at receiver. They've got Courtland Sutton. They've got Marvin Mims there. He's never used a top 5 pick. Now, Michael Thomas turned out to be a top 5 receiver in the NFL. In fact, the best receiver in the NFL for a year or two. He still has the record for catches in a season at, 149, which is just insane. Sean Payton thinks he can take second-round picks and make them into the best receiver in the NFL. He knows he can take 7th-round receivers, Marcus Colston, and turn them into the leading receiver on their team as a rookie. That's what he was able to do. So you talked about it earlier, Todd. You said Sean trusts himself. Sean knows he can take some guy and turn him into who he wants him to be. Sean believes himself because he's done it before. He's done it on all sorts of levels, turning a second-round pick into the best receiver in the NFL, turning a 7th-round pick into the best receiver on his team. And he looks around and says, I got plenty of talent here. He does like Troy Franklin's potential. Might not be for this year, but likes his potential. Devaughn Vele, 7th-round pick that could turn out to be a starter this year. I think he absolutely believes. And in fact, that is the guy. I do think it's very obvious who is going to fill Tim Patrick's role. I think it's Devaughn Vele. I think it's number 81. He looks like Tim Patrick. He has the same traits as Tim Patrick, went to the same school as Tim Patrick. And I think him being older, being 26, helps him this year and next year, maybe the first couple years in his career, because he is a more mature guy, but he's also a more mature player. He doesn't really need to put on body strength in order to be an NFL player. He looks like an NFL player right now. He still might be able to add a little size and a little speed and a little strength, but for the most part, 26 in the NFL, that's almost your peak as an NFL player. So he's kind of entering, and that helps him this year. I think they're going to see a lot more production from him than they would any other 7th-round pick. So I really think he is the guy that maybe he doesn't get to start week 1, but I think he's going to be the second leading receiver on this Broncos team.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad outlook or a way to look at it, because, I mean, he has done a lot of good things, and he has had a lot of flashes in camp. Only reason I would say he may take over as far as yards, but it's actually what Tim does. I don't think he's the guy for that, because I think Vele's best on the outside playing X or Z. And really, really he's an X, which is what Cortland plays, but he's going to have to play Z because Cortland's on the field. And I think Tim was the best as a slot receiver. I think what Tim did, being able to block in the slot, get open in the slot, and make plays in the middle of the field, is something that Vele doesn't have yet. So I feel like they're different players, but I think there's ways for him to, take over as far as the yards and the catches, in that regard.
I think the other interesting part about that is that, again, Tim Patrick, to me, was your best slot receiver. Sean Payton said he sees Josh Reynolds as more, he called him an outside-in receiver, where it's like he can definitely play both. He's better on the outside, though. And so you're pushing him inside or you're pushing Vele inside. I don't think you push Court inside in any situation.
No.
I think like the idea of having like Marvin Mims in there as like a change up from the slot is always fun because it makes the jet sweeps, those sorts of things easier. We've never really seen that though. So I'm curious what that looks like.
We saw a little one to Troy Franklin this week.
Yeah. Was that from the slot? I can't remember.
I think he'll be more slot. I think you're going to get
a
little bit of like jet motion with him, but then you can get a lot of slot fades. Like
True.
Having a nickel who is usually not the fastest corner on the field, covering him one-on-one up the sideline, that's going to be tough.
It still seems like more often than not, though, you want that like big body. Honestly, just doing what Tim Patrick did in that Packers game where, you see the cover 3, he sits down quick while the linebackers are still dropping. Bo gets the ball there so quickly that like they just don't have a chance to break on. It's easy, like 4 or 5 yards over and over. There's going to be a blend.
Yeah. No, but I think what Tim did is unique. I don't know.
I agree.
I can't think of too many other big body slots, though. When you think of guys around the league, most of the slot receivers are smaller, more agile.
They're Michael
guys.
Bandy.
Yeah, they're more built like Bandy.
Yeah.
So that's what made TP so unique, is that he could do everything you needed from the slot receiver, but also he could block the hell out of a linebacker or, a safety coming down.
Yeah. I think going back to Vele, what makes me the most excited about him is Puka Nacua. Not because like Vele is actually going to have 1,500 yards this year, but just to see Puka, and there have been some other late round receivers recently who have produced right away. Puka being a 5th-round pick. I think that if that hadn't happened, and a couple of those other guys, I'm trying to think of names off the top of my head. If they hadn't happened, it might be tougher for me to get behind the 7th-round pick actually being an important piece of the offense right away. But that seems to be a bit of a trend, is that the guys who don't run the 4.3s or low 4.4s just wind up later in the draft, and they're still productive receivers.
So you would point to a guy on a different team outside of a guy that Sean has worked with before?
I mean, point directly to Sean's history.
Who do you point to?
Marcus Colston.
Yeah, he's late too. I mean, that's another
round.
example.
Literally the exact same.
But I also think, again, that was a decade ago. Like
but
that's
Sean.
It was Sean, but I mean, that's a different Sean Payton. Is it? Think of who you were 10 years ago.
Well,
I mean, people I just think that's like a. Definitely,
you realize the Broncos hired Sean Payton for who he was 10 years ago.
Oh, definitely. But I mean, there's examples
not for who he was 2 years ago, who he was 15 years ago when he was winning the Super Bowl.
The game changes over time. Like the fact that there's examples of these late round guys who seem to be popping more often now. And I think that's a lot easier than dusty old Marcus Colston.
I don't know. I thought 10
Who's
years.
a great receiver.
I thought 10 years ago, undrafted guys were still popping.
I think they still are.
Oh,
they still are.
Okay, so there was also anything else you guys want to talk about with Tim and these receivers?
No, I think, I hate the situation and I hate that, he's having to go through it, but I know that he's going to land on his feet and have a great season. He's healthy. He's ready to go. And so I'm excited for, what's next for him and his family for sure.
And I guess there's one other question that I want to ask you, Todd, because you were more tied into this than anyone else. I think it's fair to say that Henry and I and everyone from a media perspective that were out there at Broncos were disappointed, underwhelmed with what we saw from Marvin Mims. At least personally, I thought he was going to be the Broncos' number 2 receiver this year. Even with Tim Patrick on this team, I thought he was going to break out. I thought even there were many times that I said he was going to lead the Broncos in receiving. And that has completely flipped for me after watching him in training camp. It does not seem like he has a starting role on this team, and it doesn't seem like he's nearly as productive as I thought he was going to be. How much do I need to change my expectations from what I thought he was going to be? And now I think he's kind of a backup. Is that right?
Who are you talking about?
Marvin Mims.
Okay. I didn't hear you say anything. No, I do think that throughout camp, I think you saw him as a better returner. I think he has traits to be a good wide receiver. I don't know if he has them all yet. I think he's still best running deep routes, and I don't know if he has all the abilities that you want from a true slot to be able to get open in tight spaces and find windows to be able to sit down in coverages. I think he's still the number 1 returner in the NFL, and I think that for the time being, that's probably going to be his primary role.
Okay, that's totally fair, and that's just, it's good to reset expectations before going into a season, because I definitely have reset them. And then Troy Franklin, to me, there was so much hype around him when the Broncos got him, because I think there were reports that the Broncos had a 2nd-round grade on him, and they got him in the 4th. And so I think my mind, just a lot of Broncos country, went to like, oh my gosh, this guy's going to be a 2nd-round pick in terms of like how he plays, and we can expect a lot this year. And now I've had to completely reset and say, okay, they got him in the 4th round because he needs a lot of time to develop potentially. And now I'm really looking for him to play a role in 2025. I do think there's going to be packages for him, and he's going to make a couple of plays. But am I wrong in saying, like, okay, I'm really pumping the brakes until 2025 with him?
I don't think you need to pump him all the way to 2025.
Yeah.
I think he'll have success this year and then also make a name for himself within the year. I think that there was multiple times, even at practice, which you guys were at, there was times where, sometimes he came with the ball, sometimes he didn't, but just his ability to break away from defenders and get down the field, I think that he's one of the best at doing that from the wide receiver position. Like, Marvin Mims is fast, but I think Troy Franklin understands how to use his speed as a receiver a little bit better. And I think that, that won't be underused, I will say, throughout the year.
I like that.
Yeah.
And if anyone knows how to use certain players and specific packages and get guys on the field that typically aren't on the field to play to their strengths, it is Sean Payton. He's great with that. So, all right, I love that. There was one other move that the Broncos have made with a big name player, and I want to dive into that after I give a shout out to our friends over at Coors Light. We've always got Coors Light on the set here, and you can tell that our studio's kind of warm right now because the mountains on the Coors Light bottles and cans are not blue. That's the awesome thing about Coors Light. It tells you exactly when it's time to drink. When it's chilled, the mountains on the bottle and can turn blue to show you that they are as cold as the Rockies. And everything about Coors Light is made for chilling because it's brew chilled, it's bottle chilled, it's served chilled. And, of course, the bottles even tell you when it's chilled. If you want to chill after a long day of work today, this weekend, chill with your friends, chill from the temperature outside, Coors Light is a beer that we reach for over at DNVR. And if you want it delivered straight to your door, go to CoorsLight.com/DNVR, where that will hook you up with Instacart, delivering it straight to your door. That's CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Make the most out of times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light and get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
I had a couple of free bets yesterday. I mentioned I had the first NDSU bets.
Yeah.
So those were actually parlays. They're both 6-leg parlays. I took. It was like a $20 free bet. I put $10 on each. I picked 4 baseball games yesterday. Hit them all. So now I've got the North Dakota State plus I think it's 9.5.
Yeah.
Parlayed with the Broncos plus 5 week 1, and then the other one has both the money lines parlay.
And now, what are we talking odds?
Well, I mean, they're both $10 free bets. The spreads pays out $300 if I hit them both. Woo. The money lines pay out $950.
Woo.
Yep. So
you do the free bets right.
yeah, no, because
So
you
you
have to go for the
stack up.
long odds. Because if you go for short odds, it just mathematically you should go for about 10-1 to maximize the returns. These are a little bit more, but I'm officially in big on North Dakota State.
A little bit more. It's like 100 to 1 odds.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. One with 30-1. Yeah. 10-1. Yeah. Or 100-1. Yep. So I've got those on the way. I feel pretty good about it. And that's because Bet365 has all these awesome specials. Rockies won yesterday too. Great day. At Bet365, you can take advantage of a couple different perks. Place a bet $5 or more, get $150 in bonus bets, or a first bet safety net offer. Place a bet of up to $1,000. If the qualifying bet loses, you receive a match refund in bonus bets. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older, physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or somebody you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, so let's jump into the other big name that the Broncos are moving on from. A report came out yesterday that said the Broncos were trying to trade Samaje Perine, and if they aren't able to trade him, they will release him. This is not a surprise to us collectively because we only had the Broncos keeping 3 running backs on the roster. But I will say it is a surprise to me in the sense that I saw this coming outside of the fact that any time the Broncos ran a 2-minute drill in training camp this year, Samaje was still the one on the field. And obviously we know that was his specialty and his role last year, and that was used so much with Russell Wilson last year. And Samaje was crucial for that, and he was great for that in that role. And they still kept doing that this year when they would go in 2 minutes. It was him that was on the field as the Broncos running back. So I thought, man, if he's going to make the team, it's because Sean still is showing us that that is the guy he trusts in the 2-minute warning. And that's like the most important part of the game is end of first half, end of the game. So that's the only reason I would say I'm surprised, but we just did constantly see it. Was this at all of a surprise to you, Todd?
No, I think the writing was on the wall. Unfortunately, they just have kind of like receiver, like a stable of backs that they want to see what they can do. A lot of guys that are pretty good backs when they're healthy. So I just didn't see space, for Samaje. And I thought that, in my opinion, not saying that, anybody else in the building felt that way. I felt like that interception early on in preseason kind of hurt. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like already in kind of like a battle for a spot, and then, interception kind of in 2 minute where it's your time to shine. This is what you do, which was uncharacteristic of him. It's just kind of one of those things like, if somebody's on the field and they just keep making plays or good things happen around him, like, let's keep him. If something bad happens, kind of when you're in the hot seat, it's like, well, maybe that's kind of like a sign. But I still think Samaje's talented. He's been a good back in this league for a long time, and I think he's still got, more downs to play.
Yep. Yeah, I think he's like I've seen a lot of people say he's probably just going back to the Bengals, which would make a lot of sense. I'm curious if either of these guys get traded. I doubt it, just because there's so many options out there, and the value seems pretty low. Obviously, if the value wasn't low, the Broncos would probably hold on to both of them. So I'm curious to see what that looks like.
Well, if a team were to trade for Tim, don't they only have the vet minimum and cap hit?
Yeah,
I think that's what the team would get.
Definitely.
So, I mean, if you trade a 7th round pick to secure that you get a guy that's going to produce for you.
Yeah, but you also look out there. I mean, what is it? Noah Brown, who was cut from the Texans. I can't remember who's still out there. Who?
Tony.
Kadarius Toney. Yeah. Yep. It just seems like there's so many receivers out there that trading for one is probably both. But I mean, how many of them are veterans who are proven like Tim? I've seen people talk about him going to the Lions, which would kind of make sense. If George Payton could get picks out of these guys, that would be incredible.
It would be, and it seems like, well, I mean, you announce that you're going to release the guy, and then you try to trade him. Good luck with that. Broncos did it last year with Alberto. Alberto has very little production compared to what a Tim Patrick or even a Samaje Perine have. So there certainly is a chance. It's probably just a contender that doesn't want to lose these guys on the free agent market, and especially with Tim, if you're getting getting him for $1 million, regardless of if you're picking him up as a free agent or in a trade, a 7th round pick might be worth it to land a guy that we all know can still play right now. I would say it's more likely that they trade Tim than Samaje. Would you agree, Todd?
Yeah, There's a couple people that could use a Samaje though. The Browns didn't just get hurt?
Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
He was hurt last year, and he's still going to be on the PUP.
Right?
Yep, for the first 4 weeks.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, 4 weeks is a long time.
Cowboys.
He can play.
Cowboys.
You don't trust Zeke or what?
Zeke
Do you
can.
think Samaje is better than Zeke right now? I would say yes.
I mean,
Man, probably.
depends on what you ask him to do.
Anything.
Oh, wow, anything? I don't know if I can get behind that, but
You think Zeke is still nice?
no.
That's what I'm saying.
When's-
Samaje has to be better.
When's the last time Samaje just had like a handoff single back straight up the middle, went for more than 4 yards, 3 yards?
When's the last time Zeke
Fair.
had?
I can't say Samaje is better.
Zeke's had a lot more opportunities, though.
True.
I'll say that.
But I mean, at least he's still getting those opportunities.
Oh my gosh.
It's because he was the fifth overall pick in the draft. I think that's why he's getting those opportunities
For sure.
now. All right, so let's look at the Broncos receiver group or Broncos running back group really quick. Todd, who takes over that 2-minute role that Samaje had?
I think it's going to be split, but I'm going to ultimately give it to Jaleel. I think if you just run him out of the backfield enough, you won't get blitzers in the way that you don't want to, in a 2-minute drill. If you have guys or defensive coordinators constantly worried about this guy catching the ball in space, well, I can't blitz 5. I can't blitz 6. I got to sit back and play coverage. So I don't think he has to be in there blocking, 24/7 because he's going to be out there running real routes. And we'll see how a linebacker or a safety does against them, and they won't do well. But I think that's how you counteract. Is he a good blocker? Can he stand there? He doesn't have to stand in there. We're running screens. We're running every route in the book. We're going empty. Like he's not even blocking. So that's what I would do.
So then, does that mean that maybe early in the season you do get burned a couple of times when Jaleel's in there and they're bringing blitzers in, but then the league will learn like Jaleel's going to burn them the other way? Whereas if you blitz and he spits out of the backfield, that's going to turn into a really big gain, and then maybe later in the season is when teams pause?
No burns. I think you just start sending him out from jump.
And then if they blitz, he's right there.
Just right there, hot.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. Jaleel is going to be fun this year.
For sure.
I think. All right, let's jump into some super chats right now. And if you're tuning in with us right now, hit us with a thumbs up. And again, we'll be back today just after 3 p.m., right around 3:15-ish. But let's hop into the super chats right now. First one coming in from Jordan says, really makes no sense to keep a guy like Stidham who brings nothing to the team and then get rid of your most clutch receiver in Tim Patrick. Also, don't understand cutting Jalen Virgil. Do they expect teams to just kick the touchback?
Jalen Virgil had the best return. I think he's a really good special teamer. If you really want him to be that guy, you can put him on the practice squad and have him play the first 4 weeks, then find a spot for him. Nobody's claiming Jalen Virgil. Nobody's claiming Brandon Johnson either. Again, you really like him. Over the past 2 years, there have been 2 receivers claimed off of waivers. And, I mean, we've talked about Noah Davis is out there. There have been other receivers who've been cut these last couple days. I can't remember who it was. Those guys are not going to be at the top of the list, and that's if there even is one that's claimed this year. There wasn't last year. The other piece was Stidham.
Why would you keep Stidham if you're getting rid of a vet like Tim?
Because he's your backup quarterback. Like, you need backup quarterbacks. Again, I get if you want to just say we're never keeping 3 quarterbacks, we're using that roster spot somewhere else, I get it. I think there's value in it. I think the 49ers, who didn't have a quarterback in the NFC Championship game 2 years ago because the first 2 got hurt. The reason this rule was implemented where you can make 3 active, get 47 active on game day. Like, there are certainly situations where you want 3 quarterbacks. If you don't think the Broncos should do that, I totally get it. I definitely don't mind keeping all 3.
Well, here's where I'll make the argument for Jordan here. He says, why would you move on from your vet, trusted receiver when you're going to keep your vet, trusted quarterback? If you're going the youth movement at receiver, wouldn't you just go the youth movement at quarterback as well and only hang on to Zach Wilson there? I think that's kind of the point that Jordan's trying to make there.
I just don't feel like push come to shove, if something happened, that Zach is just ready to be the starter. Could he come in and just play meaningful minutes for 3 games in a row and make the plays we need him to make until Bo comes back? I don't know if I could just hand him the offense right now today. So I think that's why you keep 3. And I think for Jalen's, the Jalen comment, he had a great return, but I don't think he does enough special teams wise, or is their best returner. I think it's Marvin Mims and Tremon Smith. And Tremon Smith is not a returner. He's the number 1 gunner on punt. He's the number 1 gunner on punt return. Like he does so much in the kicking game that you couldn't have kept Virgil over him. And last part, was there a last part? Well, that was it.
No. I think it's really fair about Jalen out there at training camp every single day. I didn't really notice him at all. Like a couple of times I'd be like, oh, it's good to see Jalen out here, but never like, oh, wow, man, this guy's making plays. You got to keep him on the roster. We did not have him making the roster yesterday, so not a surprise there.
And I really like him. Last thing on Stidham, if you wind up, say things go well this year, you're 7-3, Bo needs to miss the second half of the game. Zach Wilson's not the guy you want out there. You want Jarrett Stidham out there. Like, it is what it is. And Zach played well. He also had 3 throws on Sunday that could have been picked off. There was the one where there's the edge rusher in the backfield, and he does the little shaky thing, doesn't get free, decides just to rip a ball into the flat that was almost picked off.
Just throw it away, Zach.
I don't know what that was. There was the one where there's a screen to Lucas Kroll. Zach tries this sidearm throw to him, hits the defensive end in the gut.
Yep.
TJ Watt, when you play him week 2, he's catching that ball. Like, there's the deep touchdown to Brandon Johnson where the safety overran it. The safety ran past the ball and received. Like, you just, if you wind up losing games because you have Zach Wilson, who I think they should keep and has shown some really great things, Jarrett Sims a good backup quarterback. Zach Wilson's a good project. I'm down to keep 3.
Very fair. Wyoming Cowboy says, love that Todd is back on the show. He'd be a great coach too. Todd, how would you rate the physicality, speed, and awareness of the inside linebackers this year? Top 10, mid-tier, or needs improvement?
I think they've been playing really well. And specifically, I think Singleton has been playing with his hair on
like
fire.
A monster. Both those preseason games were insane.
The preseason games, he's been lighting it up. I think the practice against Green Bay, he was lighting it up. I think he's playing at another level right now.
Me too.
I'm really excited to see him play. I think Justin Stranad is going to have a role a little bit bigger than what most people expected to start the season. And I think he's doing great with it. Had a bit of injury early on in the year and came back and has been nothing but outstanding. I feel like in the last 2 preseason games and in practice. I think Cody Barton is coming on to be a strong piece. I think he's great in the passing game, and I think he's also solid in the running game. When he's physical and uses his hands, I think he has all the abilities that you want from an inside linebacker. I think Jonas Griffith is a great player because he's going to do anything you ask him to do, and he's going to do it 100%, and he's going to give you everything he has every single day. Pause. But he's just that kind of guy on the football field. I think LB Bailey, I think he's coming on strong. He's a young guy. He's a rookie. He needs time to develop, but he has all the traits. He understands defenses. He makes splash plays. He puts himself in the right position to be successful. I think they have a young star there if they're able to continue to, build him and give him some time. I mean, he's from California, so what you expect, but the LBs are looking good.
And he's an undrafted guy at inside linebacker. Hey, what else can you expect?
Sometimes it happens like that.
So Todd, I got one quick question for you, and we have about just a minute left here. Inside linebacker is better than anyone else. Obviously, Alex Singleton's one of the starters. The way you just broke it down makes me think maybe there's not going to be like a solidified starter at next to Singleton. There's going to be more of a rotation there. Is that right? Or do you think they'll find one guy and stick with one guy like they did with Singleton and Josie Jewell last year?
Yeah, they'll have there's a first, second down guy, and I think there'll be a third down guy. So it's not a rotation per se, but there probably is going to be somebody that's next to him on first, second down. I think there's going to be somebody else next to him on third downs. So that's how they'll switch it up.
Fair. Henry, you got something quick?
For a team that doesn't invest in inside linebackers, they don't draft them like first round, second round, even third round. No. This is about as good as you could hope. Like, you've hit on the upside, Singleton being proven. Also, Jonas Griffith just got cut.
Well, there you go.
But we'll get into that later.
We will get into that later. Stay tuned with us in 3 hours, right around 3:15 is when we'll be going live after the Broncos roster set, after we talk to George Payton. Thank you for rock and rolling with us. Again, tune in with us later this afternoon, 3:15. See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.